This is the Your Kick-Ass Life podcast, episode 31, with guest Jacqueline Carly. Any links to resources you hear in this podcast can be found at yourkickasslife.com/31.
This is the Your Kick-Ass Life podcast with Andrea Owen, a no BS guide to self-help and badassery. Because ladies, let's face it, life's too short for it to not kick ass. And here's your host, the girl who serves it up straight with a side of crazy, Andrea Owen.
Hey there, ass kickers. Andrea Owen here. Very excited for today's episode because I am personally working with the guest today. She is someone who's helping me change my life in a really positive way in terms of health and fitness. So I knew I just had to have her on the show. Her name is Jacqueline Carly, and here's a little bit more about her. Jacqueline Carly, aka Jacq, is co-founder and editor-in-chief of Boss Fit Mag. She is a mind-body medicine scientist, entrepreneur, and competitive athlete. A self-proclaimed bibliophile, nerd, and research addict, she spent her lifetime studying the inner and outer workings of the body and mind. Her work as a mentor, coach, and health advocate through her popular site and TV show, Fitterella, on the Pulse Network, inspired thousands to rekindle their inner fire through whole foods, conscious movement, and holistic living. Originally from New York City, Jacqueline is now based out of Boston. She has a bachelor's degree in business and leadership, a master's in nutrition, and is currently completing a PhD in mind-body medicine. She holds multiple certifications in fitness, personal training, yoga, and CrossFit endurance because she's a certification junkie. She speaks Spanish and Portuguese, sings Sanskrit chants and opera, and was once a flight attendant. You can connect with Jacq on Twitter at JCQLY, which she's very active, or her latest addiction Instagram at the same handle. So here is today's show. Yeah, we're here. How did you like my my excited yeah?
Ooh, ooh, I like it.
Jacq is here with us, everyone, and I'm really double excited to bring you this guest because this is someone that I'm currently personally working with, who is pretty much shifting my life, really. And I don't say that very often. And for those of you that don't know, I got to a point where, well, let me start by saying this. A kind of disclaimer. I had an eating disorder in my 20s and healed from that about, it's been about 9 years. So I've been symptom free, thank goodness, for all those years. So along the way, when I was recovering and everything, I had wanted to clean some stuff up nutritionally. And in the beginning, I didn't feel like I was ready. I didn't want to start thinking about food like that again. And just it was kind of like shark infested waters for me. But, this year I got to a point where I had a throwdown and I turned 39 and I was noticing changes, big changes. And I felt just wired and tired all the time. My back hurt most days when I got up in the morning. And I was working out kind of inconsistently. Anyway, I had followed Jacq on social media for a few years and, ran into the same circles, but never had formally met. And then, so I knew exactly who I wanted to work with. And thank you so much. I feel completely different. My body's changing. That really wasn't the primary goal. I just wanted to feel better, and that's happening. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'm so excited. That makes me so happy. That's exactly why I do what I do, because I love, love, love seeing people transform their bodies and their spirits and their minds. And also I know what it feels like firsthand as well. So that makes me so, so excited and so happy. And I've, that picture that you posted the other day, your muscle tone coming back, and that just made me, I was showing everybody, look, because it really is, even though you're making a change nutritionally and you're making a change physically, but really impacts every area of your life. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes people don't realize how connected everything really is.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sleeping better, and I had sent you a text too that for the first time in so long in the afternoon, I wasn't dying for a cup of coffee. And
Yeah.
honestly, sometimes I still drink it just because I love coffee.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Tastes
I love
good.
coffee too.
But I'll only have like a half a cup. But before, I mean, I felt wired or tired all day long. And I knew it was because of what I was putting in my body. And I will say this to you guys, I am eating the same amount as what I was eating before. I'm consuming the same amount of calories, exercising pretty much the same amount. It was the types of food, and the times of the day that has changed. So that really was it. And I just didn't know. I didn't know what to do. And it was overwhelming. So that's why I wanted to work with you. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show. So
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I will get started with the questions. So I'd love for you to tell our audience your story. So what was your life like years ago before you made fitness and nutrition a priority? Tell us kind of what happened along the way and how did you make this shift?
Okay. Well, I grew up a TV dinner, Chef Boyardee eating latchkey kid. And my parents divorced when I was a baby, and she worked, 3 jobs. And so often I was cooking for myself, and I wasn't into sports, participating in any type of sports. And I would go home and basically that was, hot dogs and Hungry Man and stuff like that. Now I'm not trying to blame the food, but I'm just saying that is how I grew up. And I was very sedentary and I grew up overweight. So it continued pretty much up until about high school. And at that time, that was when I then discovered that there were other ways of losing weight that were not very healthy, which included binging and purging and starving yourself. And also taking all kinds of diet pills. And so I was bulimorexic, which is bulimic and anorexic, for about almost 8 years, and taking all kinds of crazy stuff. And it was pretty rough for a while. I was depressed and just not happy with myself. And my world pretty much revolved around that, around trying to attain this unattainable mythical number that I thought that was going to change my world. But in reality, I had other stuff that I needed to work on within myself. And that didn't start until I was probably about 20. Met a friend who introduced me to this quote unquote holistic world, holistic nutrition. And I thought, what's that? And I ended up going to visit a school in New York. I was living in New York City, and it was the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, which today is this kind of really big, famous to do. And they've had, thousands of graduates. But at the time, it was very, very small. And it was kind of under the radar, so to speak, and also just not very in the mainstream. Holistic at that time was still kind of looked at as like, that weird hippy dippy,
yeah.
Whatever. So I went there, and it was the first time that I met people that didn't talk about like diets or didn't talk about weight or like weren't concerned with any of that stuff. And I had never really been around people that weren't concerned about weight and how you looked and so on. And it was very odd to me. And so I decided to enroll at the school at the time more so for my own learning and to see if maybe that it would help me develop a better relationship with food. I should stress that by this point I had already, been seeing all kinds of doctors and had been in group therapy and had, was doing outpatient treatment and so on and so forth. So this for me was pretty much, the last effort for me to see if there was anything I can do. I had kind of reached bottom, not too long before that, when I was in a group meeting and I looked around and I realized that we were all competing with our stories on who was a better bulimic. And that was just, it was crazy. And so anyway, so I went to the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, and it totally rocked my world. There were just things about food that I didn't know and that had never imagined in terms of how it affects your body, affects your thinking, how you feel, and also the possibilities of how you can feed yourself in so many different ways in a positive way. And I really just allowed myself to open up and start experimenting and try different foods. And the people that I was around as well introduced me to yoga and to meditation and all kinds of things. And so I was really kind of in a period of my life where I was really exploring. And so that was what pretty much started me on that path. And I had already been working for a very well-known fitness club chain since I was in high school, on and off. And so I had access to a lot of other fitness people, and I got interested in personal training. So at that point, I had gotten my personal training certification and started personal training clients. And then I started working with other eating disorder sufferers at a local center. And that kind of blossomed from there when I realized that I really wanted to be able to make an impact and help people with their fitness and nutrition to get better. I then later went on to get a bunch of other certifications, everything from yoga instructor to CrossFit, to step aerobics. I'm kind of a certification junkie. And then I got my master's in nutrition as well. And I'm getting my PhD in mind-body medicine.
It's a great kind of redemption story of being, and I know there's probably a lot of people listening that can relate to that, and whether they're still there now or they were in their past, or kind of go back and forth into those behaviors. And if you're listening and you feel like it is a real problem for you, we both highly encourage you to get help. A quick search would be to NADA, the National Eating Disorders. They have a hotline, a 1-800 number that you can call and get help. And so I love that. I love that. I think it's so common too. You know, I when you were saying like that you grew up on TV dinners and Chef Boyardee, so did I. And and I feel almost a little bit nostalgic when I walk down the aisles and see those. It reminds me of my childhood, and condensed soup was another one for me. And it was the 80s, and that's what we did.
Exactly. It was.
And I think that for our age group, and I know all my listeners are pretty much around the same age, I found that it was hard to break away from that. For me, no one taught me how to eat. I honestly, swear to God, have never been to a farm. We just went to one with my sons, had a field trip, and I volunteered to go because I'm like, we're going to a farm. I've never seen a working farm. I never have. And it was kind of embarrassing. But I didn't know. I didn't know at all how to fuel my body. No one ever taught me.
No,
so it was something that I wanted to learn too, to teach my kids. And so I started with going to the grocery store, and we'd go to the produce section, and I teach them the names of everything. Like, I don't want them to see a head of cabbage and not know that it's a head of cabbage. And because there's a lot of them they don't know. And now I'm pretty impressed. Like, my daughter goes and grabs raw green beans in the produce section, and she'll eat them. And I don't even like green beans. So it's like fist pump to her. So it's just these little tiny steps to take to not only help my life, but be a role model for my kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think two things that I always thought, that they should be teaching in school is when you're younger is teaching them about money and teaching them about food. And, back in the day we had, home ec, but that really wasn't about learning about food. That was like learning how to be a
Make
homemaker,
pancakes. Yeah,
or
so.
make pancakes, or I forget what it's called, like bird in a basket or something.
We made aprons.
Yeah.
Terrible.
But yeah, and so it's important that children learn different kind, and especially learn to experiment, to at least try and be open to different things.
That's a rule in our house. You're not allowed to say that you don't like it until you actually try it, chew it, swallow it. And, I try to encourage a couple bites. And now my son, he's very high functioning autism, but he'll get hooked on something and kind of obsess on it. And so now he's really into learning about which kinds of foods do different things for your body. So we're talking to him about protein and how that helps your body, and carbohydrates. And he'll ask me, and I'm teaching him about treats and sugar, and so he'll ask me, like, is this good for you, Mom? Is this good for you? And now he's starting to turn down sweets.
Wow.
Yeah. The upside of autism. Yeah. He's never been, my daughter would eat it 24 hours a day, including veggies too. But, it's really interesting how just learning, and they're little, they're 6 and 4. So it's been really fun with them to teach them as I learn too.
Yeah. That's fun.
The reason, the main topic in my listeners, and I know your listeners as well, are busy women. And, what woman isn't busy? We have, we're stay-at-home moms with little ones, or we have full-time careers and we're climbing the corporate ladder. Wherever you are, I know you're busy. And along those same lines, most of us have a value around being healthy, being physically fit, or just, who doesn't want to feel good?
Exactly.
Everybody does. But for so many of us, myself included, many times in my life, eating right and eating well, I should say, and physical fitness is that thing that falls off your plate. Everything else comes first. So my first question to you is how can women simply make changes in their lives that can be lasting? Because I think that's the magic component there.
Yeah, it's a great question, and we are all super, super busy. I think that a big thing is not overcomplicating it, and not changing everything at once, because we already have tons of things going on with work or school or children and all of that stuff. And so then deciding all of a sudden, I'm going to change my nutrition completely. I'm going to change my fitness and go to the gym every single day, and putting all this pressure on ourselves now to stick to this plan that we really don't have the room for in our everyday life can just really kind of throw us for a loop, and ultimately is just not sustainable. And so I really try to encourage people that I work with to focus on starting with one thing. Start with just the nutrition, or start with just the fitness. Something that you and I had talked about was that if the fact that you like to eat a lot of unhealthy food sometimes, and it's easy to do that. And so instead of me saying to you, take all of the junk out of your diet and go restock your fridge with only fruits and vegetables and good proteins and so on and so forth,
and it did not work.
Right, exactly. So instead what we did was we figured out a way to just start integrating some green into your diet without taking away that other stuff, but in a way that it will eventually push that other stuff further out so that you are replacing it with the healthy thing. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off of you mentally, and also fits it in a way where now all of a sudden it's not creating stress, which once you start creating stress is when things all of a sudden go batty and become unsustainable. And so in terms of that, I really encourage people to focus on or try to choose one thing. If you want to do both fitness and nutrition, that can be done as well, but then it shouldn't be a complete overhaul from one day to the next. It should be slowly integrated into your life. And so just at least trying to fit in 2 days of walking. I have a client that I'm working with right now who has a lot of different physical ailments going on and stuff, right? And she also takes care of her children, and she has no time. And I said to her, can you let's just commit to 2 days a week where you take a 30-minute walk by yourself. That's it. Mm-hmm. 2 days a week. And it's done wonders for her, that just her being able to take the time, but it also didn't freak her out. And it wasn't something that became unsustainable because it was just a small little tweak. And once she starts doing that, for the next 30 days or, even after 2 weeks, often what will happen is we become really excited about the success that we were able to commit to that change. Mm-hmm. And so we want to make the change even greater, and we want to add something else to it, or we want to now walk for an hour instead of 30 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that really small, because I know myself and a lot of my listeners, we're high achievers and we like to go big or go home. And I think that with this, it's just not sustainable. And I remember when months, maybe even a year or more ago, I tried to do it all myself. And I was feeling almost like I was grieving the loss of some things because I was going to just go in my pantry and throw everything away. And one of my things, I'll give you a quick example, is my husband, I have to blame him, got me hooked on Nestle's Coffee Mate, the flavored ones. Oh my God. I never drank those before. I always just was like a milk and sugar in my coffee girl. And he introduced me to hazelnut Coffee Mate. And I don't drink a ton of it. It's like a tablespoon in each cup of coffee, and I'll have like 2 cups a day. But I thought I made up that was just like the worst thing ever. And I love that you were like, just keep drinking it and it's fine. It's not a big deal. And just make other changes, add some stuff that's going to fuel you and things like that. So I love that answer. And it's just, yes, it didn't, the other way was not working for me at all. And also I think, and from a mindset point too, if this is helpful for anyone, I had shame around the way I ate and was like, oh my gosh, I'm like the worst mother because my son's favorite food is Foster Farms corn dogs. And they're going to grow up but yeah, it was, and you were like, settle down.
Yeah, but it's so true that, and especially for overachievers, you want to go big or go home, and you want it to be perfect, and you want it to be today and to the letter. Exactly. And I so get that. I'm exactly the same way, and that works in certain instances. That works if you were to tell me, Jacq, I have to get, red carpet ready in the next 2 weeks. Because I'm going to this big event, or I'm doing a photo shoot that I want to get ready for, then that's when I say, all right, this is it. You better suck it up, Buttercup, because you're sticking to this plan for the next 2 weeks, no matter what, if you want to get to that end result. But if we're talking long-term sustainable change, that kind of really rigidness just doesn't work, and you have to be able to cut yourself some slack.
Exactly. Okay, so here's a question for you there, because I get overwhelmed with this too, and I'm sure a lot of my listeners too. I feel like there's like movements and trends, and it's easy to get overwhelmed about which one is the best for you, is the one that all of your friends are doing the right one. And I love this quote from your website where you say, we're not preaching any specific method as the best and ultimate. If you love paleo eating, great. If you love CrossFit, great. If you're a vegan, great. If you love yoga, great. So can you speak more about that?
Sure. Yeah, it's crazy out there with all of the different types of diets available. The 8-week this, the 2-week that, the
21-day
paleo,
sugar detox. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I get overwhelmed just looking at it. So I know that it's just, incredibly overwhelming for so many people. And how do you know what to do? Now, the big how do you know is the answer to the how do you know is not as it's not really cut and dry. There is no kind of the kind of blanket thing that I generally say is you don't know and you have to experiment. But things that you can look at in terms of to help you make your decision is experiment in terms of how foods make you feel, is noticing how certain foods make you feel. And so if you're looking at, if you're eating foods that have gluten in it and at certain times of day, and you want to look and see how you feel and how your body feels physically when you have them, you may or may not have a gluten intolerance. And so that can, if you go and you find that out, that may direct you to one path. You may be you consume too much sugar. And so then, cutting back on that leads you down on another path. But the other thing that I really stress looking at is what your lifestyle is like. Because if you're looking to make changes in your diet, as we talked about earlier, just completely revamping your diet to doing a complete 360 to something new, can often be overwhelming. And so if you want to try the paleo diet, then I usually suggest that you start implementing the foods that are in the paleo diet rather than saying, okay, all of a sudden I'm paleo and changing everything at once. And also you want to try to stick to it at least for 2 weeks, because doing something for a week, generally you're not going to see any huge changes. You may start to feel some things if the foods are not agreeing with you, but if you're looking for results in terms of losing weight, you have to be able to give it a chance, at least 2 weeks, to see, is this having a positive impact or not? And if it's not, then that was just 2 weeks, and then you can move on to something else. And that's another thing, is not being too rigid or grasping onto the latest trend and thinking that because it's the latest trend, that it's the end all be all and it's the answer to everything. And that's the one that you have to be on. There's Atkins and there's ketogenic diet and there's all these kinds of things. But I know that, I've seen where people try the paleo and the paleo might not necessarily be agreeing with them, but they stick with it anyway because paleo is all the rage, and paleo it has all the answers, and so they want it to have all the answers for them, but it just might not be the right thing for them. And by the way, I'm not bashing paleo in any way. I totally support it. I support all food denominations. And I'm actually, I coined the term fueltarian, and I call myself a fueltarian because I'm not, pro or against any particular food strategy or eating strategy. I really feel like it's kind of whatever it works, however and whatever it works for you. But and I always say my house is a fueltarian house, and all food, it's the church, the Unitarian Church of all food denominations.
I love that. Yeah, it is easy to get overwhelmed. And I did a while back, when I was trying to, clean up my own diet, I knew that sugar was an issue with me. And so I wanted just to make sure. So I thought the way to do that would to be the 21-day sugar detox. And I made a huge mistake because I did it when I was training for the Ragnar Relay Series. If you don't know what that is,
boy.
It's like it's basically you run 3 different legs within, I think, 36 hours or something like that, and with a team of people, and it was a lot of running. And the silly thing is like, I have my bachelor's degree in exercise physiology, so I know the basics of how the body works and how the body is fueled. And I remember I was on a run in my neighborhood. I barely got maybe a half mile in, and I was looking at every single lawn. Like I just wanted to go and lay on the lawn and go to sleep. I was so tired. Not only was I tired, but my body physically, it was weird the way I was explaining it to my husband. And I said, it's as if my muscles, they feel like I was walking through quicksand, like I could not move them anymore. And I emailed my former professor at the college I went to, and he was very blunt. He's like, Andrea, this was probably the worst decision I've ever heard you make. The timing was terrible. So I was like, oh, that's not going to work.
I totally get it.
And that was an experiment for me. Like I do need some carbohydrates.
Yeah. I think it was about 2 years ago that I decided, because I like to experiment too, and even though I'm not, I'm on my training diet right now and stuff, but every so often I decide, I'm going to do this for 30 days just to whatever. And I think at the time I decided that I was going to do 30 days of an all vegan raw diet for 30 days. And not even thinking about the fact that I was starting it, and I was starting it about a week and a half before we were going to Disney World.
Oh my gosh.
And so, doing a vegan raw diet, in the park, is just not going to work. They've had lettuce and tomatoes and stuff like that, but that was about it. And needless to say, it didn't last very long. And so those are, considerations as well, looking at what's happening in my life over the next however long. Those are considerations that you need to think about in terms of how it's going to affect your life, or how your life is going to affect your plans for your nutrition and fitness.
So let's talk about nutrition specifically. And can you give us your top 3 tips on eating better? So someone who's just starting out, maybe somebody who's overwhelmed with everything out there, what are your top 3 tips on eating better?
My top 3 tips. So the first one I would say is cutting back, if not cutting out, sugar. And I'm not perfect with this because I love sweets, but sugar can really cause so many health problems, and not only just making you tired and lethargic, but just is related to so many physical ailments, and also just people not feeling good. And
so when you say sugar, be more specific. Like what kinds of sugar? Give us examples of foods.
Pretty much processed foods.
Okay.
Sodas,
even diet,
candy. Diet has this artificial sweeteners, and so if you were going to go off sugar, if you're doing a complete sugar detox, most people would say don't have the artificial sweetener, because sweeteners do a bunch of other things. However, like we said, if we're just trying to make that one change. For me, if you can at least go from processed sugar, whether it be table sugar or it be
Hazelnut
things
coffee
with
mate.
Yes, exactly. Then I would say, please. Then if you need to have the Equal or the Stevia or Splenda or something like that as you're transitioning, then please do. But cutting back on drinking soda, eating candy, processed foods, things made with white flour. So white is a big thing in terms of breads and pastas and stuff like that. The other thing is I know this is kind of old school, but it's water. It's drinking a lot of water. I truly believe that most people don't know the difference between feeling hungry and feeling thirsty.
Yeah.
And physiologically, they feel the same. And so most people think that when they are thirsty, it's really that it's their body telling them that they're hungry. And so they go and reach for food, and then they're still kind of hungry because your body is still thirsty. And so you have to retrain your body so that you can understand what that feels like. And the only way that you can do that is by drinking more water. And I drink a gallon of water a day. I'm not suggesting that everybody drink a gallon of water a day, but at least shoot for a liter of water, if not 2 liters of water, and doing it every day. Eventually, as you're rehydrating and your body feels hydrated, all of a sudden you're going to start feeling a difference in terms of what hungry means and what thirsty means. And it does so many wonderful things for your body in terms of your skin, keeping you satiated, and all of the organs functioning the way that they should, and really helps with elimination. Mm-hmm. The third thing that I would say is something that you and I had already talked about, is in terms of not replacing foods with healthy foods, but crowding out the bad foods. And so what I mean by that is not, if you're eating right now, if you pretty much eat 90% processed foods or 100% processed foods throughout the day, then if you can start out by adding in 2 green vegetables, and having those foods, obviously you're going to be taking up space in your belly, which means that you're going to be having a little bit less of what you normally eat for the processed foods. And the goal being that for a couple of weeks you're doing 2 green veggies and a couple of fruits, and then a couple of weeks later, then we're going to try to also tack on maybe an all vegetable dish, or you're going to add in some more protein. And so really trying to add more. And so as you're adding, then you are slowly but surely pushing out the other foods without making yourself crazy and completely switching everything out. Mm-hmm. Because then that also makes our bodies crazy, because we're addicted to those foods. Yeah. That's what our body knows and what it craves, and it's what it wants. And so instead of saying, hey, we're going to take those all away, which we know that once you say you can't have something is the minute that you want it. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, I love those. Thank you. And I wanted to tag on too about the water thing. When I started working with you, you had me drinking, you said 3 liters of water a day. And it sounded like a lot, because I thought of a 2-liter bottle of Coke, and I'm like, well, that's kind of a lot of volume, and plus another liter. But it really wasn't that hard. What I did was I went to my local Walmart, and I bought a really cute, it's like a giant mason jar. Mm-hmm. And it's glass and it's pretty, and I wanted it to be pretty because it was going to sit on my counter. And so what I do is I fill that up every morning, and it's 3 liters with water. And for me, I work from home, so that's easy because I kind of know I can keep track of how much I'm drinking based on that. But you can get like a plastic one and bring it to work, and have that the amount of water that you want to drink all day. And yes, you're going to be going to the bathroom a lot, or carry it with you. I found that it was easier than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I ordered a gallon bottle, a plastic gallon bottle from Amazon, and I fill it up in the morning, and then I carry it with me wherever I go, and I just drink throughout the day, and that's how I get it down. For me, if it's out of sight, then it's pretty much out of mind. Right. So then I need to be able to have it right there in front of me, and then it's just an easy way to keep track as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that, and at the beginning, can be a little bit of an adjustment period in terms of how the volume of water feels in your stomach. And so that's totally normal. If people start feeling that, you may feel kind of very sloshy in your belly and like, oh my God, all of a sudden I feel so full. And it's normal. It's just your body adjusting and getting used to this. And that will, after a few days will even itself out pretty much. Mm-hmm. And is once your body realizes, oh, okay, now I'm getting the water that I need, will do exactly what it's supposed to do.
Yeah. And I'll put a link to that water. It was only $10. It wasn't that expensive, and it's actually pretty. So I'll put a link to that on the show notes. And again, if you want any links and resources that you guys hear in this podcast, go to yourkickasslife.com/31, and you can read about that. I also, a quick change that I made in regards to water again is that I started, because I'm always thirsty in the morning. I wake up thirsty, not really thirsty, but and I'm like ready for coffee. I started drinking water before I drink my coffee, only a glass. I just fill up a glass, drink. Sometimes I don't even drink the whole thing. I'll drink most of it, and then I drink my coffee, and it's made a huge difference.
Yeah.
Just I'm drinking less coffee, which I don't even finish my cup in the morning.
Absolutely.
That was
absolutely.
unexpected.
Definitely, because we and it's the same for me as well. And I love coffee. My family's Brazilian and Puerto Rican. I had coffee in the bottle practically. But it's the same thing. It's once you start, if you start your day drinking water, and if you can at least commit that once I wake up, I'm going to have 8 ounces of water, then it will totally diminish the amount of coffee that you will have thereafter. And because physiologically it just has to, it's taking up more space. And your body is also actually feeding the thirst. Whereas if you're having the coffee, and the caffeine, it's a diuretic. And so it's not really quenching your thirst as much as it just tastes good.
Yeah. Okay, so I have one last question for you, and this is kind of a personal one. Well, not really personal, but...
Oh, get down, girl. I'll tell it all. I'm an open book.
Well, I think that I'm always really curious about the people I interview and what their real life looks like. And I know that your PhD is going to be in mind-body medicine, and I'm sure that it's a very broad topic that encompasses so many elements. But I'm curious how you keep your mind and body connected. So, do you have like a morning ritual, or what exactly does that look like for you?
I don't have a morning ritual. I use mantras a lot. And so I use, mantras, Sanskrit mantras, chanting mantras. And so of the Hindu gods and goddesses, for example, Ganesh, who is the god, the remover of obstacles, and he has a Sanskrit mantra, Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. And so I'm a singer, and I grew up a singer, so I love to sing the mantras, and the mantras quiet my mind and make me feel better, and I'm able to really decompress when I use them. So I use those a lot. But other than that, right now, my mind-body connection usually happens during my cardio, when I'm doing cardio. And I do a lot more steady state, slower cardio than the high intensity stuff. And when I pretty much just tuning in to myself and to my head. And I have on my phone, I've written down things that I want to tell myself, or things that I want to remind myself about myself. And I read it throughout my cardio and repeat them back to myself. And often it can look a little kooky, but I'm having a conversation basically with myself. And that's how I'm able to connect that part of the mental and the physical, and so that I know that everything is working for the same ultimate goal. My dissertation work is actually on mental toughness, and it's on the idea of overcoming obstacles and being, no matter how many times you fall down, to be able to push through scenarios that you just never thought that you possibly could, and resiliency and being relentless in in any area of your life. And so I'm putting together a framework for people to be able to apply in any area of their life, whether it be home or work or sports or personal goals and so on and so forth. And so with that being said, a lot of a lot of the self-talk that I do and a lot of the kind of quieting of the mind that I do has a lot to do with not thinking and just doing and not giving and being relentless with myself, in the sense of a lot to do with focusing on getting through things and not giving myself an out and not settling, and just going for it. And so a lot of my self-talk comes from that. And that for me is a form of mind-body connection.
That's interesting. It's fascinating because I never know, what other people do. And I love hearing other people's ways of really living their best, most kick-ass life. So thank you for that. And thank you for being on my show. It's been so interesting and helpful for my listeners.
Thank you so much for having me. I love being on and I love chatting with you.
And so tell everyone, what is the best way to find you?
You can find me on Twitter, and it's at JCQLY, which my boyfriend pronounces Jacqueline, but it's at JCQLY. And also on Instagram, which I'm addicted to, I'm also at JCQLY, or they can head over to BossFit Magazine, BossFitMag.com, or Fitarella, FITARELLA.com.
Yeah, and all these links are going to be in the show notes, you guys, YourKickAssLife /31, where you can just click on the links and get to Jacq and follow her everywhere. And there's some really great articles on BossFit Mag too, for anyone listening who wants more information like you just heard today. And so thank you so much. It's been great.
Thank you.
Yay! So until next time, ass kickers, keep kicking ass. Hopefully this was helpful and you can make some small changes in your nutrition and fitness. And I will see you next time for episode 32. Bye-bye.